Good evening. Welcome to. Here's a feedback. Good evening. Welcome to our Council and Committee of the Whole meeting for January 16th. Bienvenue à notre réunion de conseil pour le 16 janvier. To begin, we will have the land acknowledgement by Councillor Jerome Cushing.
Madame Mayor. Je souhaite prendre un moment pour souligner l'importance du territoire sur lequel nous sommes rassemblés. La municipalité de Nipissing-Ouest reconnaît avec respect que nous sommes réunis sur les terres ancestrales des peuples Anishinaabe, sur les territoires traditionnels des Premières Nations Nipissing, Temagami et Dokis, désignés par le traité Robinson-Huron. Nous honorons leur lien historique avec le territoire et nous valorisons leur contribution considérable au façonnement et au renforcement de nos communautés. Ce faisant, nous réaffirmons notre engagement et notre responsabilité envers la réconciliation et l'amélioration de notre compréhension des peuples autochtones locaux et de leur culture.
Merci. For number 2, I'll take any declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'll move to, we do have an addendum this evening, so first approve the addendum.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that the addendum for the meeting of Council and Committee of the Whole held on January the 16th, 2024 be adopted as presented.
Other comments? All in favor? Carried. And the agenda?
It is moved by Councillor St. Louis and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that the agenda for Council and Committee of the Whole on January the 16th, 2024 be adopted as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. To open the meeting this evening, we do have a delegation. We're very happy to welcome to West Nipissing Council, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, to speak about the cost of community goods study. And here today with us in the chambers, we have Madeleine Baudry, President, and Omer Levin, Vice President of the West Nipissing Sudbury East Federation of Agriculture, as well as Stephanie Vantoff, the membership services for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and joining us online, and I believe the one who will be doing the bulk of the presentation, we have Ben Lefort, who is a Senior Policy Advisor with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. And with that, I will pass the floor to Mr. Lefort.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. So I will just share my screen. I wonder if I'm able to share my screen, or is the slide presentation, is that available in the council chamber? Just wondering what the procedure is.
I can give you a control, or I can share it.
Oh, okay. If I could have control to share the screen, that's probably the easiest.
Perfect.
Okay, there we go. Excellent. So again, thank you for having us here this evening. We're very excited to be able to present the cost of community services project overview, so you all know kind of what the project is about, what the goals of the projects are, and what's required if it is decided that that West Nipissing Council wants to host a study in the future. So I'll start with the general overview and then move into the specifics. The cost of community services projects, these studies were originally developed by the American Farmland Trust in the 1980s. And the original goal of these studies was to add an additional argument for the preservation of farmland. There are lots of common arguments and cases to be made for preserving farmland: economic reasons, environmental reasons, social reasons. And with these studies, the aim was to add an additional argument, which is financial reasons, fiscal reasons to maintain preserve farmland. So what these studies do is break a municipality's land base into distinct land use categories and then look to allocate all of the municipal revenues and expenditures to those land use categories, which typically include residential, commercial, industrial, and farm. So these were very popular in the US, but prior to OFA's involvement in these over the years, there had only been one done in Canada outside of Ontario before our involvement. I think the best description that I go back to of describing these studies is that they are a snapshot in time. So they were looking at the results for one municipality in 1 year, which is which is why the OFA has been invested in doing multiple studies in as many counties and regions of Ontario as possible over the last several years. So we're just about to finish our 7th study, and looking forward to doing an 8th in the near future. So there's 4 steps to completing one of these studies, and the first is defining land use categories to use in the study. We rely on property tax classifications to do that for residential, farm and forest, commercial, industrial categories that will mirror the tax classes. The second step is collecting data on all the local revenues and expenditures from the municipality in that fiscal year, year-end reports, financial budgets, departmental reports, etc., that can help to us with step 3, which is allocating the revenues and expenditures to each of the land use categories. And we use a demand for services to do that. And I'll get into an example of that in a few slides. Then once that is done, we try to put that into a comprehensible single number, the expense over revenue ratio. And I think this is best understood kind of visually. So for the expense over revenue ratio, if it is 1, that would be the red line that we see on this graph. And this graph is, I'll mention, the average results of the 150 plus studies in the United States that before we were involved in these. So that 1, at that red line, a ratio of 1 would say, for that land use category, for every dollar revenue they bring into the municipality, they demand exactly $1 worth of services. So it's a fiscal net neutral. Below the red line would indicate that for every dollar revenue brought in, they consume less than $1 worth of services. So a net positive on the budget. And above the red line would indicate for every dollar of revenue brought in, they consume more than $1 worth of services. So the average results from the U.S. studies show that on average, residential categories tend to demand more in services than bringing in revenue, while commercial, industrial, farm and forest properties are on the other end of that spectrum. So one of the goals here was to gather Ontario-specific data, because the municipal financial setup in the United States is not only different from state to state, but much different in most cases than Ontario. So we couldn't just simply assume that the same results would carry over to Canada and to Ontario specifically. And also, OFA is a provincial advocacy organization. So what we also wanted to do is identify areas and services that municipal services where perhaps the provincial government should be playing a larger role in funding in supporting our rural and northern municipalities. So those are the 2 main objectives of every study we enter. I know we are trying not to go over my time by too much, so I will try to move through this quickly. I did cover these steps at a broad level of the steps of actually defining the land use categories, collecting municipal data, allocating the revenues and expenditures. I'll spend a moment here because this is an important point. And I use an example. So again, we're using the demand for services by each land use category to make the allocations. And the example I have here is, so for fire services, and again, we're using demand for service. So if there were 100 calls for the fire service in a given year, and say 85 of them went to residential, 5 of them went to farms, and 10 of them went to commercial properties, then the allocation for the fire expenditures and revenues, grants, or whatnot related to it would be 85% to residential, 5% to farm, 10% to commercial. Again, those are kind of made up numbers for simplicity, but just to show you that it's a demand for services that we are trying to get at from to make those allocations. These are the results of past studies that we have done. So we've completed studies in Bayham, Mulmer, Mapleton, Lanark County, Zora Township, and Prince Edward County. And we are in the process of finishing up a 7th study in the municipality of Grand Valley in Dufferin County. And what we see here are the results of those studies. So the green line being the ratio for farm and forest properties, the red for residential, and the dark blue line for commercial. And as well, these bars here represent the population of each municipality in the studies. So generally, we have small municipalities, typically 10,000 or less, with the 2 exceptions being the county-wide studies we did in Prince Edward County, but still around 25,000 people, and Lanark County, which just shy of 80,000 people. And Grand Valley Memory Services is similar in size to Mulmer and Bayham and Zora, around 10,000 or less. So quickly identifying which municipal services we've kind of identified through doing these studies where there could be advocacy effort between OFA and our rural municipalities to advocate for additional provincial dollars. So what drives the results of these studies in large part is the box that we, and by we I mean Ontario, the provincial government, and all the people of Ontario. We demand municipalities deliver certain services, but only allow certain revenue tools to fund those services. And that's really what drives the results of these studies. And during the studies, we're looking at which services might be underfunded. One very obvious area, and it's an area we've advocated with on rural municipalities for all of my 11 years at OFA, is the Municipal Partnership Fund, which has been, so the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, which is a key funding for rural and northern municipalities, has been significantly reduced in funding over the last 15 years or so. And with that, it has added additional burden onto property taxpayers of all classes in rural and northern municipalities. So one of the goals of these studies is to then identify locally what are the broad issues like the OMPF, and then locally what are issues specific to West Nipissing that are financial strain or that need to be addressed. So we want to look at the provincial level of what's common through all municipalities, but we also want to find what is uniquely difficult for West Nipissing. So what's a commitment required from the municipality to complete a report? It is generally just staff time, and we make every effort to minimize staff time. But what would be required is, access and sharing of the data and reports. All can be done electronically through email or Zoom calls, with the occasional follow-up email for clarification or phone call for clarification. We have done 7 of these studies now, so we are getting better at asking the right questions to minimize the amount of time we need to take up from staff. But that would be the municipal commitment if you were willing to host a study. So I'm sure I've gone over my time, so I will thank you again for the opportunity and very happy to address any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lepore. I will open the floor to questions from members of council. I'll break the ice if you like. I'm sorry, Mr. Pellet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Has this study ever been done in Northern Ontario?
No, and that is, so, OFA does not plan on doing these forever. We will eventually, cap off at a certain number of studies, but we do very much want to get at least one study done in Northern Ontario. We are a provincial organization, and it won't feel fully complete to us until we have studies represented in all regions of the province.
One more question. On page 23, you're making the case for municipal funding.
Mhm.
We talk about road and bridges.
Yep.
Just for an example, like we got a bridge on the Eugene Road that must be replaced, and it's estimated at $2 million. And it's a crucial bridge for the farmers to bring their crop to town.
Yeah.
Would OFA have, how do I say that, have the power to help to go get grants, let's say, for a bridge like that, because it's connected to the farming community?
So yeah, absolutely. One of OFA's in in all of our provincial pre-budget commission submissions, one of the first asks is almost always additional funding for rural and northern roads and bridges funding. So it is constantly one of our largest asks of the government. There are programs in place for funding for roads and bridges in rural municipalities. They just simply need more dollars into them to cover issues like you're talking about. A $2 million bridge in a small municipality it does not sound like a lot to someone maybe living in an urban GTA municipality, but certainly it's a significant amount for municipalities with a very small population and tax base. So yes, would be the shorter answer.
If I may ask a question just about the land use categories. So when you look at farm categories, do you, we have our A1 and A2, which are agricultural lands, but do you also split it off to include lands that might be zoned rural that are used primarily for agriculture? Because we do have, so a lot of our farmland within the municipality may not fall under the A1, A2. But it is rural land being actively farmed.
Sure, good question. So for the land use categories, we are using the property tax classification. So any land and property in West Nipissing that is either in the farm property tax class or in the managed forest tax class, we would combine into the farm, forest, or open land class. Which it brings me to a point I forgot to mention, which is that because on-farm residence plus 1 acre of land is taxed as residential, that the residential class does include on-farm residence as well.
Okay, thank you. And just one further question in regards to like kind of the allocation of staff time. So I'm not sure if any of the municipalities that you've worked with are kind of a similar size to us, but, do you have an estimate? Because of course that always plays into it. One of the very rare resources in any municipality is labor. Our people are already very busy. So to have an idea of what kind of time commitment would be needed from staff would be helpful.
Yeah, so what we've gotten, so it's hard for me. I've never been told how long it takes to kind of gather the information we ask for. But we now, having done 7 of these studies, can in the first few emails basically outline all of the documents and data that we would need. And then in several follow-up emails, try to get clarification of understanding. So unfortunately, I don't have a solid number because I've never been told how long it's taken. Which also means we haven't been given any feedback in 7 studies that the time allotment is overly burdensome, and we have worked with small municipalities. I believe 5 of our 7 studies were all with municipalities with a population less than 10,000.
Okay, and sorry, one final question. From the time we would kind of sign on to when a completed study would be available, what's the general timeline for the entire project?
So that's great. So once it begins, we do these in a 4-month term. So we do have within our policy department, I've been given a very small budget to hire a co-op student to help, and that's where we've now timed these projects to begin and end during a co-op term, and we have pretty comfortable with that, which is 4 months. Now, the trickier question is when that would work would begin. So right now, what we're doing is going around to different municipalities and gauging interests and kind of compiling a list of municipalities that have said, yes, we would like to host a study. Once I have that list, I take it to the OFA board and I allow them to decide where the next study would be done from the list of municipalities that have said yes. So that whenever that process would begin, when the actual study would begin is harder to say. Would probably later in this year. Probably, if I had to guess, it would be around the fall, and then being done by end of the year. If would be my current best guess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lepore. Other questions? Councillor Vanier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Out of the seven studies, have you had any positive responses, and was there any additional funding available through those studies that gave us additional funding?
So we have gotten very good feedback. So when and each municipality has kind of had a different issue that have been mostly important to them. But one issue that really has come out of it is when we presented the results to Mapleton Township in Wellington County, they were quite taken with the numbers around the provincial gas tax funding, which gas tax funding comes federal and provincial. The provincial portion of the funding only applies to transit. So if you are a small municipality without your own transit line or transit system, you essentially get no funding from the provincial gas tax, which is different than the federal gas tax funding, which is per capita, and you can use it for roads, bridges, wastewater, any number of infrastructure projects. So one policy kind of advocacy issue that we have now begun to discuss and work on with municipalities is addressing that imbalance. That it's not fair that people pay for gas and drive on the roads in rural and northern municipalities, but there is no provincial gas tax dollars that come back in return. It all goes into urban transit. So the gears are very slow that on the type of thing like that. I can't say that we have successfully changed that at this point, but that is a example of kind of I consider it a very positive step, because it is now identified as a joint issue between OFA and the municipalities that we've done these studies in, and begins the effort of the very long effort that's required to get that kind of change of a provincial program where hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. So the policy win has not come, but the advocacy and identifying of issues we can work as municipalities, as rural municipalities and the agricultural community that we can work together on is beginning to form.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would just like to thank the representatives from our West Nipissing Sudbury East Federation of Agriculture, as well as Mr. Lepore and Mr. Koff from the OFA for coming here tonight. It's a really interesting program. The next steps for this is that it will come back to council for committee discussion, and staff may reach out to one of you in the meantime to get some additional information in regards to that, but we look forward to having that discussion at council as to whether this is a program that could be a benefit to West Nipissing. So thank you again for coming this evening. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have Mr. Hudson? Okay. Thank you again. The next item on the agenda is we are fortunate to have our Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Kassan, here with us tonight to provide his report for our first year, the first year of our term. So, Mr. Kassan, it's nice to see you again. And we do have your letter in our packages, but I will open the floor to you, and look forward to hearing.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship and Council. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you to present the report. There's there's not a heck of a lot to present other than a congratulations to the team. Because as I indicated in the report, I've had only one complaint, which was dealt with very early in the term and resolved. And and I'm really proud of you guys for this, I've had 10 requests for advice. To me, the most important role of the Integrity Commissioner is providing advice and education to council so that council can avoid the pitfalls that happen when there is a breach of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act or the Code of Conduct. And I'm just really happy with the way this council has been using that resource. I certainly think that any money spent on advice is substantially less than what would be spent if you were into a complaint situation. And so I think that really shows good leadership and good stewardship of municipal funds by council. I think that some ongoing training is probably a good idea, not because I have concerns about the behavior of council, but just because it's good to keep the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act top of mind when council are behaving in their roles as municipal council. It's also important to remember that the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act also applies to members of committees and local boards. And so you may want to have some training for them. Honestly, we don't have a lot of complaints about local boards, but I have been involved in a few. And there was one that was just released from the London area just before Christmas, where members of local boards, it was a school board, in fact, were found to have breached the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and they may very well have been surprised that they were caught by that legislation. So that's what I have for council and your worship, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I'll open the floor to members for any questions or comments from Mr. Cassan. Wow, it's crickets over here. For my part, Mr. Cassan, I'd just like to say thank you very much. I know that myself and our staff has really tried to instill in councillors that if you have a question, ask. Be sure and take the responsibilities under both those acts seriously, because it is our duty to act according to the law and with integrity in the things that we do. I do appreciate your comment in regards to local boards and committees, and that may be a discussion we have as to whether or not we want an additional session where we can invite the members of our many different municipal boards and committees all to sit together for a session, because I think it is important to note that those rules do apply outside of just council representatives, but also to municipally appointed representatives. I would like to say thank you to you and your team personally. I have asked for advice on occasion. The response time has always been excellent, and I've really appreciated the discussions about you do more than just give advice. You help to teach us how to determine these things for ourselves so that we don't need to keep coming back to the same situations over and over again. So I really appreciate your approach in dealing with us. I found it to be very helpful and educational and helpful for me. So thank you again very much for the service that you've given us over the past year.
Thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it.
Okay, with that, short but sweet, and we will reach out to you. Happy New Year to you, and thank you again for all your work.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, if I may be excused.
You may. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay. Okay, sorry, so that was in committee of the whole, not a delegation. So we will move on to 5.1.2, Roma Conference Delegation Update. Would you like me to? Okay, so Roma does start this weekend on Sunday. We have myself and 3 members of council attending. It is a fabulous conference because the curriculum is really based on the needs of smaller municipalities, and I found it to be very useful. But as an update, we have received confirmation for 2 delegations at the Roma Conference. One is with the Minister of Health, and we will be attending with the CEO of the hospital, Sue LeBeau, and talking about some of the challenges of our local hospital. So we're quite pleased that we've been granted that delegation. The second delegation will be with the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, or it could be Community, Children and Social Services. And we will be speaking with that minister in regards to the board of the DSAB. And we have put in a request to be considered to be granted an additional seat on the board of DSAB, which would be in keeping with both our size and our financial contribution to that board. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. Both of those are scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. And I know that staff is working very hard at preparing the briefing materials for that one. And Sue LeBeau from the hospital is taking the lead on the materials for the hospital delegation. So that's the update for Roma. If there are questions or comments. Okay, moving on. The next item up for discussion this evening is Bay Street property disposition. And I will pass it to Mr. Barbeau, who will likely pass it to Madam Sharma as a planning issue.
So we'll just skip the middle person.
Okay, so.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is an update. You will recall this subject matter came up midway last year, and staff was directed to go back and talk to the abutting landowners before council made a firm decision on the disposition of this road allowance and small bits of municipal property between 2 properties. Subsequent to that, the abutting owner with whom I was checking if he might have an interest in part of it subsequently acquired the property from the original requester, such that the same owner is now on both sides of the property, albeit in different corporate entities, and is also requesting to purchase that same piece of property from the municipality as an addition to his. So this is.
Was it an appraisal? We got to the point of appraisal
We
being
haven't
done, or
got
that
there
it
yet.
was stalled and then?
That's
So you just want to make sure that now that it's both the same person, that we're okay with proceeding with the.
That's correct.
Okay, questions from members of council? Councillor Pellerin?
I'm not sure if it's the right time to ask that, but did we get the policy in place for the sales of property we put in a reserve? Remember we talked about this?
No, not yet. It will be coming through you, Madam Chair. It will be coming, but we will be holding assets in reserve for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so I'll just take a quick show of hands if, to see that council, you need direction to proceed with the appraisal.
Move the file forward.
Move the file forward.
Yep.
Okay, so all in favor? Just, thank you.
Just, madam,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just a question. Do we, for the appraisal, do we take, first of all, somebody from the real estate here in town?
Yes.
And is it always the same person?
No.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so that was another quite simple piece. And the next item on the agenda, 5.1.4, is proposed short-term rental accommodation bylaw. And I will pass it to Mr. Barbeau to speak briefly on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be fairly quick. It's more procedural than anything. Staff had a good chat with other departments with respect to a variety of different issues. It was a very good, productive meeting, and then there was a memo that was prepared for this meeting, and in that memo, there were some discussions with yourself, your worship, and some staff, and it seems like it has more moving parts than you know, and then more options that come forward that are great ideas. And so what was thought of is we felt that it wasn't quite ready for this meeting, but what we did think was that such as the procedural bylaw, it would be perhaps a good idea to have a little ad hoc committee of the staff just to finalize it. We're at the 90th percentile, but it's the last 10 that's the killer, I think. And so one of the ideas that we were having was to have 3 members of council sit with staff and just finalize that last bit before it goes back to the next council meeting. I leave it to you, Madam Mayor, to put that out. But of course, we talked about, obviously the chair of planning, if Ms. Tessier, Councillor Tessier would be willing to sit with us. And then one other.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think as we discovered during our last kind of group discussion, there are so many moving pieces on this, and I think if we can kind of funnel some of it down so that when it gets to council, we've got really good directional questions so that we know what council's true intent is. I would also recommend Councillor Nicol being in Ward 5. I know that she's had a substantial amount of discussions with different property owners on different sides of the issue, and does have a lot of people in her ward who are affected by short-term rentals. So I think that would be a good fit, and it also would give Councillor Nicol her first opportunity to sit on an ad hoc committee and work closely with staff capacity, and I think that's a learning opportunity for her as well. And Councillor Tessier sat on one of them before, so she knows what it's like. But with council's permission, that would be kind of the plan, and then bring it back on either February 6th or February 21st, however that timeline moves out. So if council is in agreement to that, we move forward, and staff will schedule a meeting. I likely involve Mr. Poulain, Madame Michel, and potentially chief in the role around bylaw.
Right, we'll have it properly staffed.
Okay. So if council is okay with that, I'll just take a quick show of hands if we're okay in proceeding in that manner. So, very much. Councillor Nicol, Councillor Tessier, they'll be in touch to set up a meeting. And the last item under general government for this evening is 5.1.5, which is a road closure request for the Jarbo Street extension. There is information in your packages. There was an agenda request put in by Councillor Nicol after hearing from some of her constituents. So I will actually pass the floor to Councillor Nicol to speak a little further on the subject.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To summarize it, basically, this road was created in the late 70s during the flood to help residents leave because the other portion of the road was flooded. And it's never really been maintained. It's more of a trail. You could get up it in a pickup truck, but it's more of an ATV trail at this point. And residents were concerned with the expected increase of traffic at the rink and the larger footprint of the new facility. People coming up the trail might get into an accident, and there's been a lot of excessive speeding up that trail, road, whatever we're going to call it. So they were requesting we close it, but not permanently, whether through a gate or cinder blocks. And then it leaves access if there's ever another emergency or if there's an event and we need to get in and out through the back exit. But not permanently close it, but just to potentially alleviate any incidents.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't know whether staff had any comment to share on that request or not.
If it's council's wish, we can find the solution to barricade it appropriately, leaving, because it is, as Councillor Nicol indicates, it is utilized in emergency situations. That river does flood, and so So certainly as long as we find a mechanism to, should it be needed for access, that we would look at it. We'll find a mechanism if it's council's wish.
If I may ask a question, it's not an actual road at this point, it is just a used
Just
trail
true.
that runs through municipal property entirely.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to this item? Okay, I'll just say that I can see where the concerns would come. I did get a chance to go up and visit the new rink and field over the weekend. And the footprint definitely is bigger than what it was before. So I can understand the concerns. So if council agrees, we will bring this back. It'll be staff for recommendation. Like, do you need a
No,
do you need a resolution or anything?
I can go by the minutes of this meeting indicating that it's council or the committee's wish to have us act on it.
So all in favor of making that change to, oh, sorry, Councillor Rivard.
Hi, just through you, Madam Mayor, I was wondering, I've seen quite a few situations like this, like where if it's not labeled very well in the winter or something, it could also pose a hazard if we do decide to put a gate or these big cinder blocks there, if it's kind of used as a trail for ATVs or sleds. So just if we do go that route, I would suggest that there's something really visible or bright, and so that it would be safer.
Okay, so if council is comfortable in moving this that direction to act on that, show of hands, please. Thank you. Next, we have our Public Works Committee, and we have one item on that, and I will pass it to our Chair, Councillor Vanya.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the item is the petition for guardrail on Laval Drive. So the information was shared with us with Ms. Henning. I don't know, Ms. Henning, do you have anything to add to your report?
Just to clarify on this, so this location on Liverett Drive, the culvert was placed in 2022. Prior to that, there was no barrier there before. There was a culvert there before the culvert was replaced. However, the hazard wasn't visible before because there was some small trees growing along the side of the road. Those trees were removed when the culvert was replaced. Now, when you drive through there, you do see the water on either side. So it's currently posted at 50 kilometers per hour. I think there's less than 50 vehicles per day on this road. It's fairly low traffic. But there is still the water there. So there is that hazard. And if you look at the standards for guide rail, because the water is there, it could be warranted in this location. That said, installing guide rail in this location will likely cost upwards of $300,000. And we have several other locations throughout the municipality that are similar. So I would just caution council that if we do want to look at putting guide rail here, we may be getting into a situation where we're going to have to start looking at guide rail at all of these locations, and that would be probably hard on our budget.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open up any questions from the council. Madam Mayor?
How long is the stretch of road that they're asking for them? I see it on the map, but I just.
The road itself is several kilometers, but guide rail, I think we would need about 300 meters of guide rail at that location.
300 combined, so 150 meters on each side.
Any other question?
Just have a comment, can we replace, like, plant trees on each side so that the visual can go back to its original state?
Yeah, the trees that were there before weren't planted, like, so trees probably will naturally grow up there again on the banks, and the visual will over time go away. I mean, now I believe that there's a fair bit of rock there because of how the culvert was replaced. So I don't think that we want to get into actual planting things because it probably wouldn't necessarily take, but over time,
What type of trees were there before, do you know?
I'm not sure. Yeah, just scrub brush. I don't.
Because I'm thinking cedar trees grow anywhere that could be,
Yeah, and the other concern with getting into planting things like cedar trees, is they do have a pretty big root bed, and we don't want something that's going to undermine. It's quite narrow there, so we don't want something that's going to be undermining the road as well. So.
Thank you. Any other questions by council members? Any questions? Was everybody in agreement to the recommendation to not put a guardrail on that section of road? And show of hands, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Excuse me. We'll now move into our regular meeting. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda, please.
It is moved by Councillor Crochet and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that the consent agenda for the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting on January the 16th, 2024 be approved as presented.
Okay, questions or comments? I just have one question. The two road assumptions are related to the items in new business?
One of them is.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, and then nothing in planning, correspondence, or unfinished business. We'll move 6.5 new business. And I'll have Madame Clerk read the.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-03, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to convey certain lands on Gaultier Road, being Part 1, Plan 36R15168, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
So are these both matters that went through planning committee? I'm sorry.
Remember, they came to council. It was a request by two neighbors on either side to purchase a strip of land between the properties owned by the municipality. So they're split right down the middle.
Okay, so there's two
bylaws back to back.
Two bylaws back to back, both for Gaultier, one for each neighbor.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions or comments? Am I voting both at once or do I need to do this?
There's two different bylaws. I'll read it. I apologize. I was mistaken.
Okay, so
Sorry.
for bylaw 2024-03, all in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Crochet and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-04, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to convey certain lands on Gaultier Road, being Part 2 on Plan 36R15168, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Crochet and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-05, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-60, being a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking in the West Nipissing Municipality, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay, so this is the item that we spoke about at committee last meeting. I was going to say last week, but it was a month ago now. Questions or comments? Councillor Tessier?
well, we're at 6.5.3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, yeah, 6.1, 6.5.3.
I'd like to present a motion to defer this item to the February 20th, 2024 council meeting to allow a Cache Bay resident to the opportunity to share with council on February 6, 2024, the results of their research and survey about the three-way stop at Levac and Cache.
Thank you. So we have a motion to defer on the table.
Need a seconder to the
We
motion?
need a seconder to the motion to defer. Councillor Pellerin.
To vote on the deferral.
Okay,
Or
so,
discuss the deferral.
okay, does anybody have questions or comments in regards to the deferral?
I'd like to record.
Okay. Just let,
Yeah, the reason I'm, do I give the reason why I second that, or? Okay. My reasoning behind this initially was, it's in Cache Bay, I guess people in Cache Bay want this. But I find out that it's not the case. We got a whole bunch of emails saying the contrary. So yesterday, the day before, I went through there, and once in a while, I do cut across. And that intersection, it's,
we're just discussing what he's saying.
Reason for deferral,
Just a reason for deferral.
not whether
Because
it's necessary.
if we're gonna defer it, then this should be discussed at a future meeting. So you can say, because I've received emails, blah, 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 but then
Okay,
if we
yeah.
start talking about the actual, then
Okay.
that's kind of out of scope. So we
Okay.
just want to stay within the reasons for deferral. Can be discussed now if we want to discuss the actual original motion and whether or not you support the motion, then that would be after the deferral is handled.
okay, so my main reason, yes, because we got a whole bunch of emails from different people, I assume, that are living in Cache Bay. So I, at the time, I didn't pay too much attention, but now I'm paying more attention. So,
Okay.
So the recorded vote on the deferral.
On deferral.
Councillor Kurshane?
Deferral?
Yeah.
No.
Councillor Gagne?
No.
Councillor Nickel?
No.
Councillor Pellerin?
yes.
Councillor Restoul?
No.
Councillor Rivard?
No.
Councillor St. Louis?
No.
Councillor Tessier?
Yes.
Mayor Rochon?
No.
A motion to defer is defeated. So
Thank
the
you.
motion itself is back on the
The
floor.
motion itself is back on the floor, so if you'd like to make your comments now, I can start with you.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just what I said a while ago, it's, that intersection's been there forever. I went yesterday and drove from the other way, from going to Cache Bay, from Cache Bay coming out, and I really doesn't see a need for a stop, especially coming out of Cache Bay. I parked there for a few minutes. 3 cars went by from Levac Road to the Cache Street. 2 of them rolled right through the stop. So the emails that we got suggested that, and 2 out of 3 made the point yesterday. I think that's the biggest problem. The other thing, is there a report? Some are saying they look for a report from the OPP, and apparently there's no accident report. So we have some. How many, and how deadly is the corner?
So,
That's-
Chair, for
Sorry. Ms. Ending, if you'd like to respond to it.
I reached out to Staff Sergeant Paul Burnett to get the collision history at this location. He was able to locate information from me, he said from 2019 to 2023. The email says we have 5 particularly reportable traffic involvements at this section of roadway, 2 intersection-related accidents in 2022, and 3 other incidents that were traffic enforcement stops, likely vehicles running a sign. So yes, that's from the OPP.
Thank you very much. Councillor St. Louis?
So obviously I travel that road every day, probably 4 or 5 times a day. Many people have reached out. A lot of people have told me that they're not in favor. Absolutely, I understand that. However, there's also people that have reached out and have told me that they are in favor. I personally think it's a good idea to have the stop signs there. What we also need to remember is that this information that we're receiving now is only from the OPP. We don't have the information from prior when West Nipissing Police were taking care of that area, right? So I don't know how accurate it can be, even worse than what it is right now. What I will also ask though, and that's what I've told the individual, the biggest concern, and that's been raised to me, is what Mr. Pellinet or Conseiller Pellinet said is the blowing up the stop sign. Absolutely, I see it, it happens. So at our police board, I will, ask for additional. No.
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'll ask for additional policing, and I've made that known to the residents that have approached me. One thing that they've asked for, and I think also it's the way the shape of that intersection is done, is if it's possible to add a bigger stop sign for the residents coming, or not the residents, and because like Mr. Pellerin or Councillor Pellerin said, the residents of Cache Bay, let's not forget, it's not just the residents of Cache Bay that deal with that intersection. The increase in traffic has gone up. I've lived there for 11 years now. And in the last 11 years, the increase has gone up, whether it's people from Verner, Lavigne, Manettville, Noelville, wherever they're coming from, that's who's traveling that road. The speed is excessive, and putting a stop sign going westbound will reduce that speed. Yes, if people are blowing the stop sign, it is a policing issue. That's where we will approach the police and ask them for increased surveillance, if you will. But the speed is unbelievable. Most of our residents in Cache Bay, the ones that live there, when you come to that intersection, you have the decency to put the signal light. If you're staying straight, you'll put your signal light going left, even though there's no turn left, or if you're going right. Unfortunately, not every individual that live in that area will do that. So if you're in Cache Bay and you're coming eastbound and you're at that stop sign and you think the person is going to go straight, and that's where these collisions are happening, is you think the person's going to go straight because they're not putting their signal light to go into Cache Bay. You start to go and they turn, right? The fact that you made a comment, Conseiller Pellerin, is that there's been no deaths there. Well, that's the last thing I want. I don't want to wait until there is a death. And I know it's just the way it came out, but the last thing I want is for somebody, and we have a lot of people walking that area because there's no sidewalks on the VAC. And a lot of people walk all around of Cache Bay. So there's no sidewalks on the VAC street. So again, to me, it's to try to reduce the speed. Are they going to listen? That will be a policing issue and an enforcement issue that hopefully we're able to address at the police board meeting the next time I attend.
Thank you very much, Councillor St. Louis. Mr. Barbeau?
Unless there are no other comments, the only comment I would make, and CAO, I'm supposed to advise council, I think it's a slippery slope, I'd be very careful about holding resident safety and making it a public Facebook debate. And I would be very careful, and I would caution council on unofficial sources of information. You have people, when we get requests, oftentimes we turn these requests down because there aren't any warrants, and it frustrates people in the reverse, such as street lights in certain areas, and people want them and we don't have them. But in this case, it isn't, as you indicate, Councillor St. Louis, it isn't through law abiding in people. It usually accidents are happened by carelessness or the people who are reckless. And those are the people who can hurt the innocent too. So if staff have determined that it is, and the only thing I'd also add for the benefit of the public and that they would not know in Cache Bay is they're dealing with historical. I had the pleasure of transferring that land to the OPP, keeping an additional acre on this side, which is commercial. So there will be development that's closer to that stop sign. There'll be more traffic because it's commercial. And the person who transferred that land has also subdivided and created some sewer and water on the other side of that road. And so now you're going to have a lot more, less sight lines and a lot more homes and business. So the intent of Cache Bay is to maximize the fact that you have a beautiful asset there and develop it. So all of those things, future and existing and past, that wasn't factored into why Public Works and our emergency people came into it. It's warranted now, but I can also tell you it'll be more warranted in the future. That's all I just wanted to say. Thanks.
Yes. Are you scratching your ear or
I
putting your
believe
hand?
Mr. Councillor Restool had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Restool.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just through you, I just wanted to share as well my thoughts. And often we get a lot of email information, and that's fine. You know, our contact info is out there so that community members can contact us. But I agree with our CEO when we talk about getting hard data and professional opinions on guiding or helping us make decisions within the municipality. And I think it's part of evolution as well. As was said by Mr. Barbaro and by Councillor St. Louis as well, there's been a lot of growth and development there, and it's important to keep up with changes within our community. And it's a safety issue. I agree. We don't want to wait until there's an accident, a serious accident where there's someone, seriously injured there. But there's so many comments that I've read in the emails that are kind of contradictory, I guess. I've read some people say that they've witnessed a lot of close calls there. And I just find it confusing how you're against putting safety measures in place where you yourself are admitting that you've seen a lot of close calls there. But if it is something where we're changing a bit of the intersection, we want to put a larger sign for those folks coming over the hill from the west towards the east on Levac, I'd support that as well, just for visibility and just for safety. But I think at the end of the day, we're making this decision to make the community in Cache Bay safer for the growth and development of that whole area around there. So I don't think it's a bad thing to evolve as a community and increase safety measures that are in place. And this is just my own little side note. I think often when you see these issues raised in communities where you're talking about stop signs, safety, speed limits, often it's a lot of local users who are on those roads regularly. And if it is police enforcement that some community members are asking for, and it's been mentioned again earlier tonight, I'd support that as well, because it's the same people who travel these roads. And if you have some measures in place to try and curb some of those challenges or safety issues that are there, hopefully the message gets across and everybody becomes a little bit more safer when they're traveling. So I just wanted to share those thoughts and let you know that it's not just a cardboard cutout here in Peterborough on the screen. It's a real person sitting in. But thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Other questions or comments from councilors? I will say for my part that when I read the staff memo, it confirmed what I had always thought every time I had driven through that intersection. So I've always found that corner to be confusing and not to make a lot of sense. And when you talk about being contrary to driver expectation, when you're stopped at that stop sign, when you're stopped at a stop sign, you kind of automatically assume that the guy facing you is also going to have a stop sign, just because that is a common traffic pattern. And then as Councillor St. Louis said, do you signal right if you're going straight? Do you signal left? And so I think that a lot of confusion is caused by the odd angles and the fact that there's one stop sign anyway, so when I read this, I never would have thought to say anything about it, but when I read it, I'm like, I've always thought that intersection was unsafe. I always felt like, okay, are they going this way? Are they going that way? And so, I do concur with the information that's been provided by staff and the rationale for doing it. So I do thank you for looking at that, and thank all of council for having input and having thought about this a little bit. So with that, we do have, if there are no other questions or comments. Sorry, Councillor Shipley.
The comment is there a way to ensure that we can look at putting a bigger sign there or something flashing? Just because I believe that is the biggest concerns of the individuals that are there was people not noticing that sign, especially with a lot of the trees and shrubs coming in through the ditches. So if there's a way that we can ensure that we put a bigger sign on that one, not necessarily the other two, because one's an open field and the other one's a rock cut, so shouldn't be any trees there.
Yeah, we can make sure that those signs are visible, and we can look into the larger stop signs at that location.
Excellent, thank you.
Are there signs that kind of indicate stop ahead kind of thing?
Yeah, actually, as per the regulations, when we put up new stop signs, we are regulated to put like there's a new stop sign ahead sign in so many meters in advance of that sign. So we're not just gonna put them up and not have that new sign there.
Yes. Councillor Rivard.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. To kind of add on to what Councillor St. Louis was mentioning, I think Councillor Resto last meeting mentioned that some of those larger stop signs on country roads have those solar panels with a blinking red light. I don't know if that would be one if you're coming east down Levac. The other two should be visible enough, but maybe once they come up the hill and see that blinking red light, if it's possible. Or
I don't know that that's warranted with the amount of traffic there, but it's definitely something that we can maybe monitor, and is for reaching out to the OPP to have them monitor the intersection, then, and we're getting reports that people are running them, then absolutely it's something that we can look at.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor, and
It is moved by Councillor Cochrane and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-05, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-60, being a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking in the West Nipissing municipality, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Nicol. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-06, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing municipality to set the interim tax rate for 2024, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Thank you. So you'll recall we did this last year. We set. Do you want to speak to it because it's more technical money? Just so people understand what they're voting.
An interim tax rate?
Yes.
Is a tax rate that basically allows council to provide interim tax bills, which is basically is it the rate from last year? Is that?
It's 50% of taxes. It's 50% of taxes from last year.
50% of taxes from last year would be collected, yeah, and that would be the corresponding rate.
Okay, and those are for the February and April installments?
March and May.
March and May. Close. Okay, so all in favor? Oh, sorry. Were there questions or comments? Apologize. Thank you. All in favor. I saw your hands carried. Thank you. Okay.
It is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-07, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing municipality to borrow money to meet current expenditures, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Refreshers, okay, Mr. Purple.
Every year, we need to have a borrowing bylaw. And so at the start, the first meeting of every year, you'll have this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. 6.5.6.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Nicol. Whereas the West Nipissing Municipality has received confirmation of funding from the Clean Fuels Fund establishing biomass supply chain in order to complete a feasibility study designating the West Nipissing Municipality as a bioeconomy development opportunity, a BDO zone. And whereas the West Nipissing Economic Development Advisory Committee has recommended to Council not to proceed with the project and Council has concurred with the recommendation, be it resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality confirms that it will not be proceeding with the bioeconomy development opportunity and accordingly will not require the above funding.
This was discussed both at our Economic Development Advisory meeting and in committee at the last meeting. So we are voting here not to do something like this. So we're aware. So does anybody have questions or comments on the BDO program or the resolution? Okay, all in favor of not doing it? Just want to be clear. Thank you, Carrie. Okay. And then you want to read the proclamation or would you like me to read it?
The resolution, read the proclamation. Whereas the Alzheimer's Society of Sudbury, Manitoulin, and North Bay Districts is an organization that provides support, education, respite, and resources for individuals and families affected by Alzheimer's disease in our community. And whereas to engage our community in raising awareness about Alzheimer's disease, particularly during Alzheimer's Awareness Month, be it resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality hereby authorizes the declaration of the month of January 2024 as Alzheimer's Awareness Month in the West Nipissing Municipality.
I'm not going to read the proclamation because the proclamation is identical to the motion. Thank you very much for that. Questions or comments on this? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, and with that, if I can find a piece of paper, I do. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have an addendum this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, 8.1, we have an addendum item for a purchase of some equipment.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Whereas tenders for the tandem diesel reversible snowplow and combination dump body spreader truck were opened by the Director of Corporate Services and the Director of Infrastructure for the Municipality of West Nipissing. And whereas 2 submissions were received, and whereas Council concurs with the recommendation received, be it resolved that the tender for the tandem diesel reversible snowplow and combination dump body spreader truck for the West Nipissing Municipality be awarded to Freightliner North Bay, having submitted a quotation of $393,199.11 plus HST meeting all specifications.
Okay, questions? Is this within the projected budget for this purchase? Yes. Was this a 2023 or 2024?
This was a 2024, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. That's the only reason. Thank you very much. Okay, I won't keep everybody long with the mayor's report tonight, but I think everybody has seen the news by now that the field covered rink is up and operational. I know Councillor Nichol has been, and I stopped on the weekend as well, and it is a really fantastic looking project. So just a thanks to the volunteers who kind of helped drive the project, the former members of council who helped drive that project, as well as to our staff who managed the project and got it done. It does look absolutely spectacular. We will be having a formal opening event that's scheduled for Friday, February 26th from 7 to 9 p.m. Did I say February? Yes. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Friday, January 26th, 7 to 9 p.m. And it should be a really good time. I know that our community services department is working hard to put on an event that will be a lot of fun for everybody who attends. Really meant to be a celebration for this great accomplishment and this brand new facility in our municipality. The second thing I'd like to talk about is that the municipality of West Nipissing has been selected as a finalist for the Economic Developers Council of Ontario Awards of Excellence. in the category of planning and strategic development for rural communities. And this is in regards to the land use and development strategy project for the former mill site. So that's really exciting, even to be declared as finalist, to be recognized among our peers for the work that our economic development department is doing to build the community. So I did just want to let everybody know that that is coming up. The winners of the awards will be announced February 8th. At a gala in Toronto. That's part of their annual conference. And I'd like to just recognize both our Economic Development Officer, Cassandra Gerard, and our Director of Economic Development and Community Services, for the work put in both for the initial project, which is obviously top of its class, and also for bringing it forward for consideration for an award. So it's nice to get added on back, and thank you very much. And then just one quick reminder for residents. I know we had a slow start to the winter, but the snow seems to be here. Our plow crews have done an excellent job over the last couple of days. But just a quick reminder that if your street is missed, if you need any assistance or you need to request service of any type, you can do that either by calling 705-753 2250 during regular business hours. It can be, our support can be reached at support@westnipissing.ca. And also there's a link right from the home page of our website. So, you know, if you have any requests to identify any gaps, please use those because our team is extremely responsive. And I'd just like to thank the snowplow crews for the good work they did over the weekend. And Mr. Barbeau?
Just for after hours, it's an emergency.
Yeah.
If it can wait till Monday, it can wait till Monday, but 753-1170.
753-1170 for after hours emergency. So thank you very much. And with that, we will take a resolution to go into closed session.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that we proceed into closed meeting as authorized in Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: the security of the property of the municipality or local board for matters concerning the open P building at 880 Black Road.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried.
Do we have a sign?
I don't know what this is.
None of you could stay or leave. It's
Sign.
We're allowed to stay, but if you want to leave and go home early, you can. You know what happens behind closed doors, Holly?
That's
taking that off right away.
It's your first meeting, is it not?
Second.
Second.
Where we voted.
Oh, okay. She showed up for that?
I've been watching from home, but.
So,
I don't know where it is.
what's that?
Just the meeting, I didn't press on,
Oh,
not enter.
I don't think it's
Oh,
that critical, guys.
You guys figure out there.
We're not like
Holly Justin told me.
disclosing the combination to the Fort Knox for
Neva or something?
I think so,
Neva.
so far.
I'll get it one day.
And then like heaven spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
pretty.
that's what Justin
That's
said.
super cute. I like
and Chloe.
No one's coming in with that sign on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's organized. I know I have my closed session. Okay, so we'll open the closed session council. Do I need pecuniary through this? And so, okay, so 10.1.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Be it resolved that the minutes of the closed council meeting held on December the 5th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Questions or comments on the minutes? Councillor Russell?
Oh, we're live
Just,
now.
I just want to make sure that we're offline because
We're not, my bad.
before we start.
Thank you, Councillor Russell.
You're welcome.